Hi everyone, I'm Al Bain, and this is the Taxi Studio Be More Fearless podcast series. And today we're going to chat around one of the 5 stages of fear. And the 5 stages of fear, as we see them, are imagination, fear itself, paralysis, acceleration, and memories. And today we're going to chat to our guest about the stage around acceleration, which once we introduce him will become very apparent why it's very fitting. So I would like to welcome Ollie Ollerton. Hello.
Hello, Alex. How are you?
I'm very good, mate. It's lovely to hear you, and I think it's very fitting that under the current global situation that we're obviously sat in different rooms, but not just different rooms and different continents. So I think we're safe.
Yeah, I think we are.
I think we are. Yeah, we're all safe. So I would like to give everybody who's listening a little bit of context about yourself. So I'm going to do a little introduction. So welcome, Ollie. And I think the only way I've been thinking about this, the best way to describe you is a serial entrepreneur. And I think you're obsessed with applying your experiences and turning them into a force for good. And that's a hell of a statement, but I think it's absolutely true. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I would. One thing I wouldn't say I don't like it, but I think I feel a little bit cheated these days when I get referred to as a former Special Forces soldier, almost like that was my biggest win, when really it wasn't. It's been part of my history and I'm proud of it. But, I've done a lot more, and my vision is firmly set on what's ahead of me. I don't sort of benchmark my success and what I've done that's in the rear view mirror. So I'll take that. Thank you.
No, that's okay. I mean, just to give everybody a little bit of a plotted resume, I've kind of like mapped it out here, and if I'm incorrect, then step in. But I think you started off when you were 18 in the Royal Marine Commandos, and as if that wasn't enough and didn't satisfy your soul, you put yourself through SAS selection and had a period as a Forces Combat Frogman in the Special Boat Service. And following that, you've had, as you said, you were a cornerstone of like the Channel 4 SES Who Dares Win series. But I think more importantly, and like you just said then, you're now the CEO of a host of amazing businesses. So, I mean, like, first of all, we've got like Breakpoint, which does like both public and corporate events, which gives people a really amazing insight to understand what they're capable of and how they can really go beyond their own expectations. And I've been very lucky to participate in one of your courses, thanks, and see firsthand the change that can make for myself. Another part is where you readmission like ex-military personnel into civic careers, which is just an outstanding thing to do. Let's let's honor that for what it is. That's an incredible thing to do. And then you've also got, if that wasn't enough, again, you've got the Battle Ready business, which is absolutely obsessed about health and wellness. And it has two primary functions. One, a global online fitness app, which is incredible, and you have a nutrition arm there as well. And if that wasn't enough, just to top it off, I have to say that you're a best-selling author. Topping out in the Times book list more than once for several weeks, with 2 of your books like Breakpoint and Battle Ready. And I'm very excited to say that you have a new book coming, Scar Tissue, very soon later this year, which I'm excited about. So. It's like you just don't stand still, dude.
No, it doesn't. I actually forgot about the books until you reminded me. But it's easy.
Yeah, just wrote a few best-selling books, like topping out of the Times chart. Yeah, don't mind me.
Yeah, it's no, it's. I'll tell you what though, it's my life changed when I stopped drinking. Tell you what, and a lot of people say to me, and this isn't an AA meeting, by the way, everyone. This is just that, I spent, a lot of people say, how do you find time to do things? And I found that drinking and socializing just swallowed up so much of my time that once I got rid of that, I was in a quandary at first going, what am I going to do with my time? And then I started putting in bits that fitted in those spaces. And then before I knew it, I was like, how did I ever have time to drink? But, so really, I mean, everything I'm doing is, I think I'm making up for lost time, to be quite honest, Alex, if I'm truthful, because I spend a lot of time sort of either working or socializing. And I also had it, I kind of had it in my head that the only reason you work was to pay for your social life. So I had it all wrong. I had it all wrong from the start. So I've got a bit of catching up to do. I spent a lot of time after the military in Iraq, earned a lot of money, and had nothing to prove for it really. So I'm kind of catching up now.
Okay, well, I mean, that's a very honest reflection. Thanks very much. But I wouldn't say beat yourself up too much, because your resume is like incredible. So let's honor that and recognize it for what it is. So the fact that you're making more of your time is an incredible thing, and that's a really good insight. I'd just like to chat to everybody and let them know a little bit more about the phase that we're going to talk about, acceleration. So acceleration occurs when we harness the fears rather than become debilitated by them. And for some reason, for some, the best outcome is to run, but for others, they see this as an opportunity to overcome. And this is when we wrestle back and control the mind, isn't it? And we allow our reasoning and our logic and our creativity to take the lead. And we have a real opportunity to turn negative into positive and use that energy that was once stopping us to propel us forward. And I think that's that, and let's be honest, like later on we'll get to it, because I'm going to chat to you in a bit of a chronological order. But like actually the breakpoint business you've got is purely about this phase, I think. Absolutely. It's incredible alignment. So I'm going to put it out there that I think that you're obsessed about the acceleration phase within the 5 stages of fear. Would that be right?
Yeah, I guess so. And I think you're very right in saying that, that's really what Breakpoint is all about. And Breakpoint is, the reason I called the company Breakpoint is from a long history going back to when I was 10 years old, when I had my first Breakpoint, getting attacked by a chimp and at the circus. And it was in that moment of knowing I was going to die, but knowing I had to take action. It was stepping into that short-term discomfort for long-term gain, and long-term gain that day was living. When really at that moment, I just wanted, one part of me really just wanted to freeze up, and if I'd have done that, I wouldn't be here today. But and really, and that's really the DNA and the foundation of what Breakpoint's all about: stepping into that short-term discomfort for long-term gain. It's taking a pause in the heat of battle, if you want to call it that, to gain some clarity about what to do next, instead of just allowing the program to take over, reacting, and then pushing you into either further danger or making the wrong decisions.
Wow. I know, I've read, a little bit in your books about that experience, and know how it did have a massive effect on you. So, but I think, what's really exciting about that again is the fact that you've used that to positive force, like throughout your career. And I think it's something that sits within you and what drives you forward. I mean, when I kind of like want to like kick off with just a bit of a question around, like, when you're 18 and you join the Royal Marine Commandos, and with regards to, like, because let's be honest, like, not everybody, that's not for everybody. No. And particularly at such a young age, like when you think about, like, I'm approaching 50, and I think about like and how confident I was at that sort of age myself. Like, how did you prepare for that? Like, what was pushing you forward? Did you have like an energy of like almost acceleration that sat within you, or were you like, did you fear what that was about? What was driving you to do that?
Yeah, that's actually quite a complex question, or can be, and I won't go too deep into it, but, I do reflect a lot back to that time as a 10-year-old, and that attack at the circus, because that changed me, that whole experience. And it's likely to change. Childhood trauma is one of the biggest, one of the worst traumas you can have.
Yeah.
And to think that that's not going to change you. I mean, it's quite easy for me to do this in hindsight now, but looking back, I can see my path was just, after that attack, I was in not too positive a fashion, really. It gave me a taste for absolute. I wanted to chase danger everywhere. I was a person of extremes, and I think there is an element of that still in me now, but I've managed to control it and put it more into a positive direction. But from a 10-year-old, it made me quite emotionless, quite fearless. And I was just on a, for me at 14, I look back now and I think, that was just normal for me to choose to go into the Royal Marines when I was 14 years old. But, my son's 19 now and he still doesn't know what he wants to do now. So really, I now know that 14 years old and making that clear direction, I want to join the Royal Marines, was quite not
unique.
the norm.
It's unique. It's absolutely unique. But I think it's interesting. I think it is part of your DNA of like you said, you have a burning desire within inside you to want to explore like the parameters all the time. But I think that's quite interesting. I mean, I'm building out from that. I mean, I was thinking about it like from these 5 stages and particularly the acceleration. I was wondering, like, when you rocked up and you were in your dorm or your bunkhouse with all these guys that were in the same boat, I was wondering if there was like an underlying current of fear, like when you first like step through and you start kind of putting yourself in that place, when you went on base and stuff. Because I imagine, like, there was, I don't know whether there's 20, 40 or 60 or 100 of you like in together, but I imagine there would almost be like a little fluid feeling of like apprehension and almost paralysis, which is the stage before acceleration, because you didn't know what you were letting yourself in for. Would you think that was true at that sort of age?
I'll tell you what, you actually talking about it's put me back there, and I'm starting to get that apprehensive feeling that I had then. And no, you're 100% right, Alex. And it's, the thing is, it's all about the unknown, isn't it? You're going into something where you don't know. I mean, it comes for me, it comes down to courage. And courage means to me, it's about throwing yourself into a situation with no guarantee of a successful outcome. And that's really what all of us were doing. We had no idea what the path ahead of us was. And, I can remember getting there and sort of sitting around thinking, you really start to question yourself at that point and think, well, before, when you're in your sort of comfort zone, your own environment, you're like, oh, yeah, I'm going to join the Royal Marines and I'll smash it. And, your ego's flaring up. But when you actually put on the coal face and you're actually there and your ego is done a runner because it's scared, that's when the apprehension starts to come over and you start to question yourself. Am I good enough? You're looking around, everyone else looks, well, not everyone else, but, there's a lot of people around you that look the perception of the type of person you, or as a Royal Marine Commando.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, I've not been in that situation, so I can't, but it's kind of pretty much how I figured it would be. And actually, as I'm thinking about it now, as you're talking, it's like, I'll tell you what I think is quite interesting about it is like why that happens is like, so the career that you've had is quite unusual, and you've put yourself in, let's be honest, lots of extreme, incredible experiences that, most people have no comprehension of. And so what you've been doing, I think, repeatedly in your early career is having to put yourself in situations where like your imagination actually, like from a fear point of view, hasn't got any memories to build out from. Does that make sense? So you haven't got like, any comprehension of actually what's going to happen. So it's only your imagination which is fueling like, what can happen next until you've done that once, like, whether you're doing like, hostage rescue or counter narcotics or, so up until you do that once, it's an interesting point. I hadn't really thought about it, but actually I imagine the mind is slightly different when it's working in like, with something completely new because it's got no reflection.
Yeah, I can relate to that, but I think a lot of it, and I don't know if it, for me, I kind of, and this really sort of, it just fitted my mindset so well, being in those kind of scenarios, that I like that I thrived off those experiences. Although the fear was there, the fear is a similar emotion to excitement. It's just how your mind frames it.
Yeah.
And I found that fear very exciting, the unknown and everything else. And really, I think I was perfect material, not just for the Marines, but for the Special Forces, because they want people that can embrace that fear, and then actually they don't get into flow until that moment happens. So really it was something that, I chased that all my life as a kid. And then, it just, for me in those situations as a Royal Marine and then a Special Forces soldier, it was something that I just thrived off. It made me feel alive.
yeah, it became a force of energy, didn't it, for you? Which is like, you know, that's quite an interesting thing, because it's like the cortisol, isn't it, inside you, kind of
Yeah.
like running at like at light speed, which, you know, but let's not go down that rabbit hole, because that's a whole conversation in itself about, like,
Yeah,
you
be
know,
careful.
yeah, yeah. I was just gonna like just briefly chat about, like, you know, when you toured operation in like Northern Ireland and like Operation Desert Storm in Iraq and bits and pieces like that, and it made me think about, like, so like once you've gone through these trainings and you've been experiencing stuff, it made me really think about like it from a different perspective. So like, rather than like, you know, the stages of fear that we're talking about which are affecting you, it made me think about, like, if I think about like somewhere like Iraq, for instance, when you were deployed in that scenario, my perception of it could be from a fear stage is that not just the people, but the entire culture might be stuck in fear and paralysis. And I wonder what that was like to enter into. Do you know what I mean? Because it's like you're coming in to like either sort something out or like help. But actually, I imagine that must be quite a weird place to be when actually the entire culture and all of the people are probably like in a really bad negative place. How does that affect you?
Yeah, well, I can relate to that a lot because you know, not only at those times going to Iraq, but, you know, after my career as a special forces soldier and the military in general, I went out to Iraq as well, and I was actually in Baghdad and surrounding areas for 7 years, where I managed, you know, over 2,000 Iraqis, and basically that was, you know, I relate to that time in that respect as well. You know, it was a nation embraced by fear. So I've got a great deal of experience in that, and it is really hard trying to change that culture, especially when it's, you know, on such a massive scale. You know, everyone around you is just trying to grab everything they can, because they don't know what the future holds for them, and, you know, everything is just, it's just so sensitive, and so it's like treading on eggshells, you know, and it's really hard. You can't. It's really hard to change that. It's really hard.
Yeah.
Um,
It's
yeah,
the scale of it, isn't it? I mean, and what you said then, I think is quite interesting. It's, you know, it's the scale of it. It's like you can come in and you can try and create some positive good and change, but, like, you know, the scale of everything that they've been dealing with over a period of time makes where they are completely ingrained. So it's an interesting one, isn't it? So it's rather than like having it yourself, it's kind of like you walk into this, and I imagine you've also got to like, you've got to keep your guard up as well with regards to the fact that you don't want to absorb that yourself.
yeah, yeah. You've got to also, which is making this amplifying this problem as well, is, you know, and I've studied a lot about this, and I talk about this a lot in my books. But you've got to look at the, you know, the way that we're wired, and, you know, every person is default negative, and we embrace negativity, and it becomes contagious. And that's why it's really hard. You know, I mean, I've looked back into a lot of evolution, and we're still thriving off that primal instinct to fear. You know, cavemen never used to come out their flipping caves and go, "Oh, it's going to be an amazing day today, full of opportunities." What, you know, they used to come out and go, "Where's that saber-toothed tiger? What's going to kill me?" You know, and that was, you know, fear has kept us alive until today, and still that DNA is running through our blood. You know, that's why whenever anything, when it comes to change, when it comes to pretty much anything that you haven't done before, you've got no confidence in, this overriding element of fear comes in, and before you know it, you're looking for everything that could possibly go wrong. You know, because, and you align with the negativity as opposed to the positivity, just through natural default of who we are.
Yeah, it's just like a terrible fact, isn't it? It's like a terrible truth, but we do like tend to, you know, and I think, you know, in reference to current situation, I think that
Mm.
couldn't be more, could you? Like, you've got like global nations basically in fear at the moment because of like what they're being told, which again is another rabbit warren of
Yeah,
of conversation that
absolutely.
we could go down. But it's like weirdly, like, and I think the only way to say it is like, unfortunately, like, not even just from your own personal point of view, not mean by you, but I mean anybody, it's fear is controlling, but actually it can be used to against like the nations and people and cultures if applied like that, can't you? Because if they aren't given the tools or the hope to understand and move through the next stage beyond like fear itself, paralysis and acceleration, then they don't stick there. It's a terrible fact, actually.
Well, that's how society is controlled, isn't it? Societies are controlled by fear. And, you look at look at me going to Iraq, for instance. I mean, Saddam Hussein controlled and those kind of dictators, they control their people with a high state of fear. And it happens in every society. You've only got to look at the news. I mean, the news is all doom and gloom, and let's not go down that rabbit hole as well, because at the moment, it's like, if you want to get rid of COVID, just chuck your TV out the window.
Yeah.
So, but it's for me, the whole thing. I always say about fear. Fear is an emotional and mental rehearsal for what you don't want to happen. So really, it's about understanding and appreciating your emotions. For me, it's about, regardless of whether it's fear, whether it's aggression, regardless of what it is, it's about understanding emotions. And really, you have to become an emotional observer. I always look at, the example of, you imagine your emotions like a fast running stream, that you're in, and if you allow yourself to be in that fast running stream, you run away with those emotions. They're contagious, and before you know it, you're overwhelmed. Once you learn to stand on the riverbank and choose to align with which emotions and appreciate them, not ignore them, but choose to align with the emotions and what degree of them, it really starts to help you change the situation. It's like you go into any situation where there's fear, and before you go in, I'm gonna. There's no such thing as having no fear. That's absolutely rubbish, because everyone that's got no fear is dead or is dying soon. So I'm going to feel fear. I appreciate that, but you put it to one side. It's just understand your emotions, become an observer of them. Otherwise, you will become a victim of them. So it's all about, and I think that's the beauty of Special Forces soldiering as well. They're totally in touch. And we've talked about this before, Alex, a situational chameleon, and the fact that they can align with whatever emotions. It's like aggression. I've seen some of the hardest blokes in the world turn down fights, where you'd think he could absolutely crush that guy. But you know what I mean? They don't allow their egos to come in and take the situation to the next level. So it's about understanding the emotions. Don't react to things, and a lot of it, there's a lot to go to complement that as well. I mean, I talk about it a lot in my books and stuff, but a lot of it comes down to breathing, and then we won't go into it too much, but the whole thing about cortisol. If you don't control that cortisol, which is your fight or flight, if you don't control that, then you'll make a decision or take an action that you'll regret. And that whole thing is what basically, when you go into any situation, you imagine, for instance, when we're stacked up on a door, and I've been stacked up on a door, you don't know what's behind it. You've gone through intelligence briefings, you've gone through rehearsals, you've had a mock-up of the actual building you're going into, or the ship or whatever. But you don't know, when you get to the door, you don't know, it's quiet. You've got there stealthily. There's something behind that door. You don't know what you're walking into. And you imagine the anxiety, if you allow it to take over, the anxiety on that moment when you stack up on the door, and then you wait for the squeeze to come from the back, which says everyone's ready. And then the moment until that door opens, you have got no idea what you're going into. And if you don't have a controlled pattern or flow of breathing, cortisol increases, you become confused, and you start to become anxious and make the wrong decisions. So a lot of that is all about breath control. And when it comes to fear, a lot of it is because your breathing's simply erratic, and the cortisol is increasing, so it's all about breath control and being able to relax in those situations.
Oh, that's brilliant. Thanks, Ollie. I'm really glad you brought that up. Actually, it's something I'm a massive fan of, and much like you, I'm a big fan of like doing work on myself to make sure I'm the best version of me. I was going to just like briefly talk about like like when you were in the SBS, and you did a range of bits and pieces in there, like hostage rescues and counter narcotics, insurgency operations, and humanitarian efforts. You even like added to your CV. You're a pilot of a submersible dive vessel. That's not an average kind of like license. But I wanted to chat to you about just 2 points there, really. One is like when you're at that point in your career, like compared to when you were 18, did you like? I mean, I think we pretty much covered it off just now, but I don't think you feel fear in the same way as you did when you first joined. But I think it's still an acceptable feeling to embrace, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's a different. I mean, you still fear that. Like I said before, it's not. You never. There's no such thing as no fear.
Yeah.
It's there for a reason, but it's a different level. You take it up to another level. So the thing is, once you in the special forces, I really learned the. I really took a lot more from the people around me. So when you're working in a small four-man team, I mean, the synchronicity and the non-verbal telepathy, if you want to call it that, was phenomenal. And it gives you such a sense of that you're invincible. And it's, not only that, I mean, you've got so much confidence in the people around you because they've gone through exactly the same training as you. And you've got so much confidence in your kit, your equipment, everything, that it really makes you quite complacent, if that makes any sense. And looking back, it's interesting for me because, like, I talk about hindsight. Hindsight is a great thing, but it's never won any wars. But for me, I look back at my life. My actual safest period in my life was in the special forces, and people look at me and go, "Well, that sounds weird." But the thing was, I felt that's how whether I was or not, it may be a different matter. But the thing is, I felt the safest in that time because I had the people around me that, that made me feel invincible. I had the tools, I had everything. It was actually when I left the special forces, it's almost when I look back now, it's like the special forces was preparing me for what was ahead. And the world ahead of the special forces or beyond the special forces was a lot scarier than when I was in the special forces, believe me. So
That's an interesting inflection, actually, because and it makes me think a little bit about, like, like you said, it's that group camaraderie, and like it's like the saying of, like, you're the sum of all the people together, and actually that's kind of like the feeling that you had there. And actually I think it's true about like life now, and it's something that I've got really good at, but some people would say is a bad trait of mine, but I'm like, well, that's who I am now. I haven't got time for anybody that pulls negativity out of me, as in, like, they're like negative. I like to surround myself now with like positive people and their outlook, because it, like, I think the group effect of that is better for me and the people then that I connect with. It's like there are people that I've ejected from my life which are just like dismal, have a poor outlook. Do you know what I mean? Because they sap energy. Do you know what I mean? I don't think that's good. That reflects on your outlook then.
no, 100%. But your values change, don't they? I mean, when you're young and stuff, and you're going out to the pub and everything, you stick with the people that you have the best laugh with because you have fun and all stuff like that. But certainly for me, I've done exactly the same as you, Alex. And I can't stand being around those people that, I'll try and change them. I'll try and, well, not change them. I'll try and show them there's another way. And if they can't stick with that, then I'm sorry, but I'm not having that infecting my vibe. I know it's a bit cliche, but your tribe attracts your vibe. And It's as simple as that. I mean, I want to stick around. I want to be around people at the moment that share my dreams and my goals and my passion to help other people. And that's really, when you talked about my businesses and stuff and my books and everything, there's one common thread through all of that stuff that is the reason for its success. And that is the fact it's focused on helping other people.
Well, it's very, very true. And unfortunately, it's kind of like the thing I want to gift most people, really, because I think it's the most transformative thing that you can do for somebody, is give them a positive outlook, because I think it affects then so many different things of their life, like their mental and their physical well-being. But you know, not everybody is awake to that, unfortunately, no matter how much you try. So then you unfortunately just have to move on, because otherwise it, like you say, it affects you. I think you kind of like went on to, like, you know, my next point, where I was going to chat about like how like you everything that you do is about helping others. And I know when you left the forces, you went out and spent some time in Asia, focusing your efforts into helping to reduce child trafficking, which is an incredible thing that you did. But I think that, you know, that almost, again, for me, when I look back at like knowing you and your in your career, I think that's, again, was one of those defining moments where it was like an extension of your DNA. You know, and it's kind of like you were just doing that selflessly, and actually starting to build the foundations of like some of these businesses that you've put in place now, which can help even more people. And I know after that period, though, you did become a little bit lost and probably disillusioned with the world, because the world is a massively negative place if you let it be. But like, and I just wanted to spend a little bit of time around like understanding the visioning that you had to push yourself through like the paralysis that you kind of were stuck in at that point. You know, how did you get to like getting from that place where it was quite negative, like, and you're not, and you know, we've spoken at length before about visioning. It's something I believe in as well. Like, you know, you can look at like where you need to be. That's very helpful. But what were you doing to help get out of paralysis and into like acceleration mode, to like get to like, you know, the start and the embryonic point of like break point?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think if I sort of go back though, and you know, I find everyone in life is, you know, I had it wrong. I was like, I thought that joining the special forces for me would be every tick box you could ever imagine. It would be like the absolute perfect fit for me, and I would be absolutely 100% satisfied and totally absorbed into that world. And it wasn't the case. You know, something was missing. I didn't know what it was. Um, and, you know, cut a long story short, left in 2000, went to Iraq, 6-7 years over there in a war zone. And then going out there to Southeast Asia, where, you know, I mean, initially I heard about the issue of human trafficking and kids being sold into slavery and prostitution. 1.6 million a year over in Southeast Asia, which now, looking, you know, now I know more recent stats is actually not that much in the whole global sort of stats. But anyway, that's another story. But I stumbled over something there. You know, I wanted to be a part of helping these kids. You know, I wanted to help change the direction of their lives. And even if I'd change one person's life, that would have been enough for me. But I had no idea at that point it was going to give me what it gave me. And, you know, if you can imagine this picture, and you know, we were basically finding these satellite camps of these kids being kept in Asia on the Thai-Burmese border. And what we would do then is we were working with another organization. Is we would get these kids and we would rescue them, then we would process them, so they would then go to an orphanage, and then they would be through donations they would be sponsored to get an education. And the actual, I mean, I've still got this vision of rescuing these kids and then seeing these kids sometime later, like walking down the street with a little school satchel and their school uniform on. And like to see you know, that for me, I'll always have that vision in my head, because it was an absolutely amazing feeling. Just the power of helping other people. I had no idea how powerful it was at all. And although we were involved in quite a few busts, but there was a major one which caused an international incident. Again, I won't go into too much detail, but we had to escape out of Thailand across the Burmese border. We got out, and unfortunately, I'd invested everything, you know, all my own money to do that operation, and that was me. I thought, this is me. You know, I found something that 100% ticked all those boxes, made me feel absolutely fulfilled. I'd never ever felt such a sense of purpose, and it was amazing. I thought, this is my life now going ahead. You know, I'd always set in stone, I don't want to do anything else in my life. And unfortunately, the whole thing crashed in a very short period of time, and we had to close down the whole operation. But one thing I took away from that, something that money cannot buy, was the fact that power and that gift of helping other people less fortunate. And that really, like you say, was the DNA and the foundation of everything else in my life moving forward. But at that point, I was in such a dark place, and it felt like I wasn't going to, my health was terrible. My mindset was just I was a massive state of depression. My life was just turned upside down. And at one point, I just didn't think there was any way out. There was thoughts of suicide and all kinds of stuff. And the one thing that pulled me through was the question I had in my head, because I created such a high benchmark previously, by passing Special Forces selection, that made me question. I was like, how can I go from hero, if you want to call it that, to zero, sub-zero actually? But knowing that I'd achieved such a great level of greatness in the past was the one thing that helped me throw that anchor out of that dark pit of destruction and start to pull myself out. It was knowing that I had achieved greatness in the past. So what I knew I needed to do, and something that they, do very well in the military, especially in the Special Forces, is you have to switch off the program and follow your heart through a simple process. And I say simple, it doesn't make it easy, because really you have to disengage all the messaging that's going on in your head, and you have to have a goal. You have to draw a line in the sand of where you want to be, and have to be able to break down that path to your goal in bite-sized chunks. And that's really what I did. I created the goal. I wasn't happy and I wasn't content with where I was at all. And I knew I could get back to where I was. And I just started making small steps and switch off the programming in my head, all the messaging that was going on, all that, and started to really follow that process. And that's the one thing that got me out.
Thanks. That's a very, very honest reflection. I'm just going to chat a bit about Breakpoint before we start to wrap up a little bit. I mean, you've got these amazing courses where basically you started to break down all of these individual learning patterns and deploying them across scenarios which people can access in both public and corporate frameworks now. And you're also you've also been training other people to do this, and you're building, from my view on the outside in, a miniature force for good. I've been on one of the courses, and there's a load of us who stand timidly at the front when we rock up and get stripped of all the things that we think we need, and given a new set of stuff that we've got to carry and lug around at speed. I did a 2-day course with you a few years ago. Just the dynamic change that can happen over 48 hours between, having met people in a lay-by when we all met versus to how we were at the very end is incredible. It's a massive amount of change, isn't it? Once people recognize it.
It's a process that I love watching, because basically when you put anyone, it's not about the things that we do. It's not about, you've only got to watch the TV show to understand that, we do certain things that you think, wow, that looks scary, that looks horrendous, but it's not really those events that create that change. It's the state of mind that we're putting people into. And basically people come along when you have when the ego is nowhere to be seen, because the ego basically is nowhere to be seen once you're in a state of vulnerability and an element of anxiety because you don't know what's going on. That is when you can start to really work with people, because at that point, when you haven't got the ability to design the perfect outcome that makes you look good, your thoughts, feelings, actions, and reactions become organic and raw. And that's the first time for so many people that that's happened to. For a long time, until you're probably a kid, that's never happened. The ego takes over, and before you know it, it's designing outcomes that make you look good and everything else. And once that's taken away, and that's why you see on the TV show, why people get quite emotional, because they actually start to see who they really are. And that's because of that very thing. They're making decisions based on their true character, as opposed to someone, as opposed to their ego that's designing it for them because it doesn't want them to look stupid.
Yeah, no, thanks. That's an amazing summary. And I think, it is an incredible experience, and if anybody gets a chance to do it, I thoroughly recommend it because it does give you an entirely different view of how to approach things. I just wanted to chat briefly about a recent experience that you've had where I think you've probably been stuck in paralysis for like an extended period of your life around that experience you had as a child with the chimpanzee, which had that profound effect on you. And I know earlier this year you went off and uh, traveled halfway around the world and put yourself out into the plant medicine of ayahuasca. And I wondered how you felt about that with regards to like, was that something that was slightly fearful for you for quite some time that you didn't want to address it, or did you have all of a sudden an energy that you wanted to explore that? Because it feels like you've revisited and unpacked something that was maybe paralyzing you, but also like giving you a force for good.
Yeah, that trip was the most amazing and fulfilling trip ever. The journey to Costa Rica, and I didn't really know what to accept, and I didn't really, I've come a long way in the last 5-6 years. I mean, to think that 6 years ago I could barely have a conversation, and now you can't shut me up. For me, I've come a long way, a long way, and I stopped drinking, I stopped drugs and all kinds of abuse, of all these elements of destruction. Have gone from my life. So I feel like, really before I went over to Costa Rica, I was like, what am I really going for? Because, from the outside looking in, everyone will be like, well, he's doing well in business. He doesn't drink. He's got like the perfect life. But really, I still had some questions that I wanted to answer. And really, I don't, I think it would take a lot, but I still know I've got that self-destruction. The red button of self-destruction is not far away. And I think it would take a lot for me to actually press that, but I just don't like the fact it's close by. Because I tell you what, my biggest fear, and people say, what you're scared of these days? What's your biggest fear? My biggest fear is being anything like I used to be. And that, because I never, sometimes I shake and shudder at the thought of who I was 10 years ago. And so really I went away to Costa Rica, and I didn't, I knew that, the more I've thought about it, I knew that although I couldn't sort of define how much it had changed me, I knew that attack at 10 years old and nearly losing my life had a massive influence on my life, and it had changed me. So I kind of thought, oh, I'll go over there and maybe, I can answer some questions there. I went there with an open mind. I went there with about 10 other veterans suffering, a lot of them were suffering quite badly with PTSD. But I had no real idea about what was ahead of me. And, when I took the plant medicine, initially, you take just a small dose. And the first session, I was quite disappointed, to be quite honest. I was like, oh, and that was it. But obviously, they were just, doing what this, they're very professional in what they did, and they were just making sure, we didn't have any, bad reactions to the plant medicine. But then the next night was just before we actually went into the treatment, we had to see the shaman and we talked to them about what we wanted to achieve, because you've got to go in there with an intention. But the thing is, when it comes to plant medicine, it doesn't go to what you want, it goes to where you need it. So regardless of what you say you want, it doesn't answer that for you. You might go in there with an intention, but it will go to where it is needed. And my intention was, I said to the shaman that I wanted to eliminate this, this self-destruction, any element of that in me. And I also made a sort of side comment that I won't mind. I think that I've got unfinished business with the chimp as well. And I thought that would be, the main thing was the intention to, the self-destruction. But anyway, I went into the second session, and oh my God, it was phenomenal. Forget the whole self-destruction bit. It went straight back to when I was 10 years old, straight back to the chimp. And it put me back in that scenario. And I have to say that it was hard work. It was really, it's quite amazing. It helped me in so many ways because first of all, I went into me as the boy. I've talked about that attack a lot, in sort of corporate talks and everything else. It's in my books, and when I look at it now, I look at it totally different now because I've always explained that situation about being the victim. And I think this is, we can take a lot from this, and I certainly did, is the fact, we're very good at playing the victim. And, for me, it was all poor me, I got attacked by shit, all this, that, and the other. And it was almost like I was getting a tap on the shoulder. I was actually there as a 10-year-old boy. I could see the chimp, and it was like I got almost like a tap on the shoulder. And it was like this question: what about the chimp? And it was like a really bizarre question. I was like, the chimp, almost like the chimp wasn't there, And then before I knew it, I became the chimp, and I was looking at me as a 10-year-old boy who was stood over my baby. And I saw me as a threat, and it gave me so much. It took me out of that situation of being the victim, and I became not a part of the situation, but I became the whole situation, and I became so much more compassionate. I walked into that arena that day. I wasn't, this chimp didn't come looking for me around the streets. I walked into its arena. I walked over. I was next to its baby, and it saw me as a threat, and it did what any mother, regardless of what species it was, it did what any mother would do, and it protected its young. And for me, it was really, it helped me so much to actually appreciate, and really the word I'm trying to get to is compassion. It taught me so much in respect of compassion for the chimp and everything else, and it really took me away. It pulled me away from being the victim straight away. It was amazing, absolutely amazing. Now, I won't go into too much detail about it, but it was a phenomenal experience. But it also taught me another thing, and that's, it was almost like as humans, when we go through any kind of trauma, the very intimate and emotional trauma, we naturally lock away. And that's almost like a self-defense mechanism, and this is why I relate that so much to PTSD and everything, which happens years and years later because it finally starts to escape. You can't lock it away. And the further you choose to ignore it and not address it, then it hunts you down. And it was hunting me down, and it had done for a long time in my life. So, and even when I was going through the plant medicine, I was avoiding the actual intimate moment when I got attacked. And it was bizarre. It was almost like whenever I thought about that moment, it was a silent moment, like a silent movie, when there was no real emotion. It was just like a bit of a scrap with a chimp. And it wasn't. It was an absolute, I actually went back to that moment in one of my, one of my treatments, and the emotional attack was horrendous. I was dying. I was being killed. I was being attacked by a flipping ravenous creature, and it was horrendous. It was horrific. And then at that moment, though, when I was going through that attack, it was almost like it freeze framed and it stopped. And I just had a consideration. I went, what would happen if I'd have stopped or not fought that day, not fought back? And then it gave me a reflection that ever since that moment, I've been fighting all of my life. And that's not, I don't mean in the military. I don't mean, going to war. I've been fighting with everything in my life from that moment, From that moment of my life, I was fighting with everything: my parents, schooling, relationships, everything was a fight. And, the big word for me was surrender. And for someone like me to hear the word surrender, and anyone in the military, especially the special forces, it's just a word that you can't align with. But as soon as you start to surrender to yourself, that's what I had to do. And that for me just absolutely changed me. But it's really, for me, the whole experience, what was it all about? It was going into that intimate trauma and managing to unravel it all and look at it and frame it differently. And again, take myself out of being the victim. I mean, that experience I'll never forget, and I'm hopefully going back there this year.
Oh wow. I mean, thanks for that recount. I mean, that's amazing. Thanks, Ollie. And what I was just kind of taking from that myself is like what you were able to do by, moving out of, you know, your pre-imagined, well, not imagined, your pre-experienced fear and how you had like dealt with that previously. You gave yourself different context, and that ability to like understand the context from a different point of view is like, let's call that whole phase what you did like an acceleration around of exploration, is giving you like a different memory, isn't it? And that's very
Yeah.
exciting, like because you've been not plagued by, but you've given yourself quite a dark memory of that from obviously the inputs that you had, but now that's completely changed and reversed, and that's an incredible thing to do. And I mean, and I also just want to pick up on, to give you a bit of like self-reflection back. I know you said like your biggest fear is not wanting to be who you used to be, but I think I just feel like I feel like I must point out that like, and it's something I've learned a long time ago, like who you used to be and everything you've done is what shapes you now. So don't forget that. And I think we need to all recognize that, because
Yeah.
there are things myself, I'm like, oh my God, why the hell did I do that? Like, what was I thinking of? Like the damage I caused, and, the effect that I've had on people. And, but actually like all of those instances in our life, I think I've come to peace within my own head, is like, those are the things that shape us and make us now. So like
Definitely.
we don't want to go back there for sure, but in a weird way, I think I don't resent those things anymore. Whereas like I potentially probably did in some things, pretty, in my earlier life. Uh,
Yeah. I mean, it's definitely, you're right there, Alex. I mean, it's definitely not about regret. This sounds bizarre, but I'm actually happy I got attacked by the chimp. I am, because it gave me such a life experience that has shaped me to the person I am today. When I talk about, I don't like the person I was, it wasn't so much the external stuff, it was the internal stuff. So that, the fact of what was going through my head, my emotional state and everything else, I didn't like the person I was. It wasn't really about the situations and how that affected other people. I just would not want to go into that mindset again. And that I'm not. I want to. I don't think fear is the right word around it anymore, because I know I wouldn't go back to that. But the thoughts and memories of it are not favourable.
they've galvanized, and like they gave you
Yeah.
essence in your core being, which has driven you, for and let's be honest, it's an amazing force of good of like the things that you've achieved, like in the two parts of your career, like your military and your post-military, like it's gone on and that's been great. But thank you for your time, mate. It's been absolutely, I've really
Thanks,
enjoyed
man. Yeah, no, it's brilliant, mate. Really enjoyed it.
Oh, that's good. So I'm just going to put a quick summary in about things I think we've learned today. So I think, acceleration, I think, it's ever evolving, it's not consistent, and it's applicable to its circumstance and its environment and the inputs that we've got around it. But I think we've also got the ability to control it and lead the desired outcome, which importantly, that informs the next stage, like memories. But the next podcast is focused on memories, and is with a great chap called Spiros Margis, who's a venture capitalist, futurist, and tech advisor. But thanks very much, Ollie. I mean, also in summary, I think there's a few points I just want to cover off. I mean, like surrounding ourselves with positive people is super important. The ability to recognize our emotions, feelings, and behaviors, and and how that affects us and the people around us. Those are all things that help us get through these stages. And the breathing, if there's one thing that anyone can take away from our chat today, like if they just do regular breathing, it transform their lives. Thanks again. I feel like, I know you quite well. I'm fortunate to know you quite well. And although you've got this incredible career today, I also feel like the best is still to come from you, because I think you've got a lot to give. So I'm very excited about seeing what that unfolds like over the next few years. So
Likewise.
yeah, cool. So thanks everyone. Remember to be more and fear less. And do you want to say goodbye?
I'd love to say goodbye, and thanks everyone for your time. And thank you, Alex.
No, pleasure. So I'm out, and this is over and out.